This video primarily addresses the GMAT Verbal section. However, I also strongly recommend watching this video for more details about reading comprehension as it pertains to the GRE as well, because the reading comprehension section is substantially similar on both tests. So first off, GMAT Verbal also has reading comprehension, but the other two question types are different from the GRE. These are sentence correction and critical reasoning, which is kept separately from reading comprehension itself. Sentence correction questions evaluate grammatical skills. Test preparation for sentence correction simply requires paying special attention to the kinds of errors that the GMAT tends to present, such as parallelism and errors in prepositional idiom. Critical reasoning questions are set aside from reading comprehension, but just like on the GRE, they do require a special kind of reading comprehension built around rudimentary logical analysis. Again, review basic logic to help students with these question types. Now, sentence correction usually is about a third of the verbal section on the GMAT. There are 5 answer choices. Your students rather, should be encouraged to choose the most grammatically correct answer that also maintains the meaning of the original sentence. So the question in sentence correction is a sentence that is underlined wholly or in part, which may have one error, more than one error, or no errors. And keep in mind that even native speakers of English struggle here because very few native speakers use the language with perfect grammatical accuracy. Tell them to focus in level 1 on the rules in Princeton, the ones that are most commonly tested, and repeat this instruction in level 2 when you get to the Kaplan textbook. Tell them, do not just trust your ears or your feelings about what sounds or feels correct. They need to learn the rules, and instructors should be employing holistic grammar and PPP in particular to teach the review materials for the sentence correction questions. The basic process of elimination approach here is to note that answer choice A will always be a precise repetition of the original form as it was stated. There will be no changes. So if you know for sure that there is an error in the sentence, that one automatically gets eliminated right off the bat. You want to eliminate any answers that include repetitions of the original error that you identify when you read the sentence. You also want to eliminate any answers that introduce new errors, as well as answers that change the sentence's meaning. Now, if you've run out of answers to eliminate, you've only got 2 or 3 left, and you're not sure what is the best choice, then choose the most concise answer. The commonly tested errors will be pronouns with an unclear referent, misplaced modifiers, parallel constructions in lists and comparisons, verb tenses, subject-verb agreements, and idioms, especially which is the correct preposition to use with different verbs and objects. So that's sentence correction. Reading comprehension. So again, this part really applies to the GRE reading comprehension as well. All questions about the same passage will occur consecutively together, and it can pop up at any point during the verbal section. So you might have reading comprehension first, or it may be your second question, or it may not show up for 5 questions. There's no predicting. On the GMAT, it's usually about 1/3 of the verbal section, so that means it's about 12 questions or so. And usually you have about 3 passages of approximately 250 words with approximately 4 questions each. You may have a very long passage that you can scroll through, and the questions will appear one at a time on a split screen. So on the left-hand side of the screen, the student will see the passage, the reading passage, which they may or may not be able to scroll through. And on the right side of the screen will be the question with the answer choices. Tell them to try not to rush, but not to spend forever on these questions. Improve their time by eliminating answer choices that are wrong. And remember that these are open book questions. The answer is in the passage somewhere. So the difficulty of these questions is increased by the test maker exploiting common mistakes and by using intimidating topics that are unfamiliar to the students. Especially for a lot of our students at AEI, the sciences can be the most intimidating, but you're going to be surprised. Sometimes you get a biological engineer who has no problem with any of the science passages, and they really struggle with like a literature passage or something. So you want to give them guidelines such as they count on you to overanalyze. So don't do this. Just make a quick outline of the reading as you're going through it, reading actively, taking notes, or in other words, making a map. I think of it as creating a paragraph by paragraph outline. They need to be familiar with all of the question types. They need to eliminate answers they can identify automatically as incorrect. And to stop being predictable, they want to avoid common mistakes. Now, of course, as you become more familiar with the test yourself, you'll be able to identify more and more of these mistakes. The test prep books do give some evidence of it, and I've tried to make clear where I'm familiar with those common mistakes, but a lot of it is based on accumulated evidence from multiple sources. What they do need is to have some sort of plan. They need to identify the basic subject of the passage. They need to identify what is the task the question is requiring them to complete, to use the process of elimination, and to read information above and below any specific part the question narrows down on. So our basic approach: work the passage. You have a plan for reading, or you might call this active reading. Follow the argument by identifying the conclusion and the premises. If there's evidence, what does it prove? And of course, what is all of the evidence? Then they want to be asking questions while they read, such as, what is the author's purpose? Are they trying to persuade me? Are they trying to just inform me? Are they presenting a conundrum for me to just think about, or do they have a solution? What are the big ideas and where do they occur? So I would actually go paragraph 1, and then if I notice a big idea, I might put a big star next to the word for that idea. What is the tone of the passage? Usually it's going to be scholarly, it might be friendly, logically critical, it might sound more objective or more biased. And where does the author go next? What do they suggest as next steps? What do they do? What is the process the author takes? You want to identify the structure. Are they moving from more specific to more general claims, or vice versa? Look at the topic sentences. These are useful signposts. Try to figure out what are the most important details, explanations, examples. Where are the traditions? What are the reversals? And you look for these opposites direction words from text completion. However, contrary, on the other hand. These can happen mid-paragraph too, so don't tell the students that they only happen at the beginning. And then, of course, what are the overall points that are usually included in the very last sentence or the very first sentence? Those are the two primary places you're going to find a logical conclusion, as opposed to the literary conclusion, which is at the finish or the ending. They need to find and follow the main idea, which is not necessarily the topic, for example, biology, but rather a claim or opinion from the author. We should, for example, study this plant we found at the bottom of the Marianas Trench for medical use or something like that. The purpose. Well, okay, so this has always baffled me. What are authorial purposes? So I came up with this list of possible purposes that I've seen most commonly. Persuasion is usually the one. The author wants to convince you that their viewpoint about some issue is the correct viewpoint. It might be more critical or evaluatory, where they're saying that they believe this idea or this plan has a lot of good points, or it could be more negative, where they're identifying lots of problems. To be more evaluation is about judging it one way or another. The author is trying to figure it out. And then a third likely purpose could be explanation or analysis, where it's more informative rather than argumentative. They're not taking a stand, they're just telling you about the idea. Generally, they're usually going to be in one way or another about trying to get the reader to accept the author's idea or what the author wants you to believe. Mapping the passage is the taking of notes, making the outline. You find the key sentences, you look in each paragraph for opinions, recommendations, conclusions, or reasons, and you can do a quick summary. In terms of the actual notes, the time the student's spending on this should be very quick, like single word notes for each paragraph, maybe a few words for each paragraph as most. So you could label each sentence as a claim or as a reason. Now, in level 1, you might want to slow down, and on the first time you introduce this, to walk through it step by step by step with the students. But by the time they get to the end of the level 2 class, they should be able to make this map on their own. And then, of course, putting these key sentences together will give you the main idea. Then they want to understand the task, and this involves looking at the specific question types and avoiding trap answers. So I've listed each of these here: retrieval, inference, purpose, vocabulary and context. Those are all specific tasks. Then there are general tasks such as finding the primary purpose, main idea, tone, or structure. And then complex tasks such as evaluation, weaken and strengthen questions, analogy, and application. Then find the information in the passage, use your map, your notes are important, reread the relative portion, and use process of elimination to eliminate answers based on whether they are using bad quotations, what we call recycled language, and memory traps. These are answers that are not precise quotes, but they sound very similar. They sort of jumble together and make a word salad of words from the passage. Our brains like what is familiar, so these are usually traps for us. They're usually partially incorrect, at least in one regard. Extreme language is only good for a strengthen or weaken question. It's bad for every other question type. And this extreme language is the kind that's the most difficult to improve, to actually logically prove. Always, never, all, none, only, must, best, fail. Those kinds of words are too extreme for the GRE. You're much more likely to see wishy-washy language, probabilistic language in a good answer on the GRE and the GMAT. So look for answers that have words like some, often, probably, possibly, maybe, sometimes. Those are the kinds of words that are in the right tone for the GRE and the GMAT. No such comparison. If the passage does not make the comparison, does not compare the two items being compared in the answer choice, eliminate that answer choice. Reversals that just say the opposite of the main idea or one of the author's claims are usually wrong and can be eliminated. So can emotional appeals and answers that require outside knowledge. And as I've said before, if an answer is half right, it is all wrong and therefore should be eliminated. I'll stop this video here and pick up the next one with critical reasoning. If I can hit the stop button. There it is.